You join us in the spring of 1999 as one of the most exciting seasons in English football comes to its denouement. This is And It's Live, the history of the Premier League. And we are, of course, wrapping up a 1998-99 season. I'm Martin in the chair, as always, and I'm joined by my two friends and colleagues. Adam Thornton, how are we doing?
Good, thank you. A rare sunny moment in Glasgow. So currently enjoying it by sitting inside doing some podcasting.
Yeah, windows firmly shut and roasting. David, Edgar, suitably refreshed and chilled, I hope.
Yeah, I mean, I was teenage and therefore lifelong goth, so I don't like the sun. And I do sit in the house listening to Nick Cave records when it gets like this. So no, I'm quite happy to be sitting here talking about 30-year-old Premier League seasons. That's kind of my jam.
Yeah, I can cope with it too. Loads to get into in terms of this title race and everything else beside. Can we just pick up a few other wee bits and pieces before we get into the downs and the ups of 98-99? David, Robbie Fowler has been a almost constant presence, ever present in this series. We all love him as a footballer. Possibly signs that his star is maybe on the wane and some behaviour very in keeping with the 1990s culture. But again, maybe a sign that he's just not absolutely super sharp. Two incidents, of course. One, the interaction with Graham Lasso, a defeat at Stamford Bridge, where he very clearly intimates that Graham Lasso is a homosexual. Possibly because he can read. And he certainly was held up as one of football's intellectuals because he would read The Guardian instead of Sunday Sport or whatever. And Lasso battered him a bit. I absolutely caught him off the ball, which was missed by the referee in that game. And then scores a penalty against Everton in the derby, and his celebration, I think, after some insinuations and some allegations by the Everton support about his social excess of Class A drugs, he pretends to snort the byline in celebration. Yeah, as I said, very of its time, David.
Yeah, very much so. Even for the 90s, I think that it felt slightly anachronistic. Yeah, the Lasso one, there just isn't a defence for a grown adult doing that. That's schoolboy stuff. And you're right, Graham Lasso got it because he had a fancy name. He read The Guardian. He spoke proper England, and he was just a little bit different. And I remember John Scales talking about this as well, that anything slightly different. He was also very well spoken and occasionally enjoyed the pleasures of the written word. That it would be picked on by certain characters within dressing rooms. I have more sympathy for the Everton one because you are, getting abuse for it, and I think human beings react, and he did so in a jovial way, incidentally, not the old-fashioned it could cause a riot nonsense that we hear whenever a player deigns to give a crowd a bit back. One of my pet hates that in any football match, when a crowd is lambasting a player for 90 minutes, he dares to maybe shush them or whatever, and they want them charged by the FA. But you can't be doing it. I mean, you absolutely can't. While it's there's a bit of me that thinks that's quite funny, actually, and did at the time. I mean, I was in my 20s, so
it was funny. I mean, I think you're right. It's playing.
But you can't be mimicking doing Class A drugs on a football field. I understand why the FA lost their shit about it. I do. Yeah. But for me, the Lasso one was far more serious. These days, you did something like that, you would be, 10, 12 game ban, pariah status would be...
You maybe go and resurrect your career.
Maybe. But it did indicate two such incidents, and close proximity suggests somebody who's maybe isn't quite as firmly on the ball as it had been previously, perhaps. And that idea was taking root at Liverpool under Houllier. That idea was, we need to move on from him. We have Owen. He's the future. Can't really play the two of them together as well. You can, but I think we could do. What we need is not two great goal scorers up there. We need Michael Owen and a partner. And Esky will go on and be that guy.
A more physical one, for Ronnie.
We need foil for him. So it was maybe not a great time to do that, but he was, he was aware of this. He was aware that Houllier was starting to think this way. So I think that might have indicated it. But in terms of we talk about celebration police. This is one of these ones where I think that on the one hand you do laugh, right, and you do. I'm sorry, you do. But you also go, I can see why they're gonna charge him.
And maybe a sign of the times that he felt that was okay, because the 90s had been a wee bit the Wild West, and it's maybe moving into more censorious times. Premier League very conscious of image and everything else. PR people over everything. Take you back 4 years before, Robbie Fowler was interviewed by a magazine in 1995 about women, and what's your ideal kind of woman, Robbie? Don't care as long as it has a fanny and breathes, was his response. Favourite chat up line, do you like jewellery? Look at my cock, it's a gem. So there was, it was a very different time.
Loaded.
It's exactly that. And no one would have batted an eyelid at that, by the way.
No, but people would have laughed. I think unless you were about in the 90s, you maybe can't quite understand just how much stuff like this was not only okay, but zeitgeist, the laddish culture, for want of a better word, and that is an all-encompassing term. But it was about, and I know that, going from certainly I go from being a wee Wallflower Smith fan to being a big loud Oasis Britpop fan. In that 90, and that transformation was there for a lot of people. I just in the year of our Lord 2026, I just can't imagine a Premier League player in any interview setting using the word fanny, which is probably where we've changed.
We've talked again about Badil and Skinner and how they're part of this laddish culture. And it's all just part of the one thing, right? And it's influence how emboldened maybe footballers feel they're able to take conversations which obviously happen in the dressing room and still do happen in the dressing room, but take that out into the public domain. Because I'm not entirely sure, although you get some very interesting answers to questions when you read back at some issues of Shoot and Match or whatever else from the 80s and other kind of football publications from the 70s. Nothing quite like this. I think Frank Skinner was asked the same question, what he looked for in a woman. He said, look, we're all said and done, I'm just drawn to sluts with big tits. And that, again, was the absolute norm. Staying with Liverpool on the football side, Adam, David mentioned that there might be a case eventually for getting moving on from Robbie Fowler. He's still going to be there for a while, by the way. He still plays an important part in their, I guess, Houlier's biggest season, 2000-2001. But certainly Owen looks to be the future. As long as we have him, we can maybe look past the past until April, when Liverpool go to Elland Road to play Leeds, and Owen does what he always does, which is just hair after a ball through the Leeds United defence, and then spring goes the hamstring, I think, and that's that, the first of a few. And a reminder then that if your game is based on that, you need to have the body that can cope with it. Otherwise, this is going to be stop-start.
Yeah, and it's a shame. Sports science obviously is not what it is now. Some of these type of players, you'd be interested, they would have them managed a lot better, I think, than at this point. I don't imagine there was really specific individual tailored programs around training, fitness, all that sort of stuff. It's sort of coming in as a wider point with Wenger, as we mentioned, but I don't think it's quite as mature that they'll be understanding this as players come through the academy and as they make their debuts and any injuries that they might get, all that sort of stuff. So it's one of those things that is a bit of a shame. Michael Owen obviously will go on and have some great success with Liverpool. You can't say he hadn't, but it is still one of those what ifs for me. In terms of the struggles that he has with those injuries, because when you are so based on it, like you said, that's one thing, but the fact that he was such a really good finisher as well, I think it's the combination really. You're looking at Nicholas Anelka being similar. In his early years. You could even go as far as making a stretch of a comparison with Fernando Torres in terms of that pace and finishing power, and it just kills them a bit. Some are able to adapt, in Torres' case, kind of not to a huge degree. And maybe it just speaks to how football was at the time. You mentioned how popular culture is at the time. I'd like to hear more from Frank Skinner if I'm honest, but the big jump, I think I say this in every single show, but the big jump throughout the 90s in terms of everything really, but on the pitch, things like sports science, things like individual training, etc., those are ripples in the pool, if you like, and it does, and it should, and it will take time for those type of things to catch up. You've probably still got magic sponges aplenty here, and you're not far off a physio running on with a fag in his mouth and a cloth in the other hand. So it's maybe not a surprise that injuries were still happening like this, but for Owen in particular, it is a bit of a shame. And yeah, I think the challenges he had, the challenges he'll go on to have next season, who knows how Liverpool could have done in this season. But I think they only win, is it 3 of their last 10 without Owen this year? Yeah, one of those what ifs.
Yeah, indeed. I'm not qualified in sports science, but you mentioned Anelka there. I think of Henry again as someone who'll be coming to the Premier League soon and is mega quick, but they've got a build that can maybe sustain that pace and maybe do other things, obviously, as well. Whereas Owen was rapid, there's just always this feeling, and Torres as well, that it's maybe based on, or it's reliant on something maybe less strong. And
it's like when you're the biggest kid in the playground and you're excelling in all the age groups, you've got a kind of superpower there, if you like, or you've got a key attribute. If that's, and you then end up probably relying on it, and maybe even over relying on it. Nobody's going to say, "Can you slow down a little bit and focus on your heading?" To Michael Owen, for example, to make you a bit more of a well-rounded player. It's going to be, you are excelling in this. Let's do everything we can to get you in those positions, and therefore put lots more stress on your hamstrings.
Adam, I'm going to stay with you. One of the other familiar faces in our series so far is Kevin Keegan. He's been away, obviously, for a while. He's been at Fulham with Mohamed Al Fayed, building something there. It's looking very promising, actually, in the division below, obviously. And we mentioned that Glenn Hoddle was forced to move on, and the people demanded Keegan's return, Adam, or return to the limelight. He's move into the England manager's position. He said at his press conference that he felt ready for this. Time would tell a different story. Started well, a defeat of Poland, I think, at Wembley, convincing, although the most outrageous handball goal by Paul Scholes I think you'll probably ever see outside of Mexico City. This is a cautionary tale maybe, about football authorities listening to the public too much, because he was not suited to international football at all.
No, and it's one of those very strange quirks. If you take the man out of it, or if you take the personality out of it, would that manager really be in the running for the England job? No, I don't think so. So yeah, I remember at the time. I remember the kind of popularity of it, and how it had to be something that they do. It was strange. He was at Fulham, where they're not in the second division this season.
Yeah, they were flying though.
Yeah, they were absolutely.
I think that happens a lot in football. That some decisions are based on things that have or haven't happened in the past. Kevin Keegan gets this job because Brian Clough didn't, and it really is that simple. They felt that we made a big blunder there. We didn't listen to the public, and it was held over the FA for decades, wasn't it, Martin? You'll recall.
Yeah,
I mean, Clough never shut up about it for a start.
Clough held it over them for decades.
Yeah,
but the media, his friends, absolutely. And it might also speak, I think you're right, David, is that public clamour that the FA have always kind of moved against, and held on to Bobby Robson maybe longer than the public demanded, and but they moved on Hoddle because of public outcry, and they moved for Keegan. Maybe less about that and the fact how many English, they were wedded to the fact that's the clamour, really has to be an English coach. That will change next, obviously. But who else is there?
No, and he's Kevin Keegan. He's Kevin Keegan. He's the symbol of the England team for years and years and years. He's the most famous English footballer for years and years. Kevin Keegan's the first footballer I remember having, and I was a very small kid at the time, it was the 80s, but he's the first footballer I remember having an individual range of products. Kevin Keegan. There were Kevin Keegan bathrobes. There was Kevin Keegan aftershave from Brute, which I can't think of anything more British and manly than that, quite frankly. And yeah, he was a superstar. And then Newcastle, to a neutral or to a non-Newcastle fan, had been very popular. I mean, unless you're a Sunderland or maybe a Man United fan, everybody enjoyed that run of Keegan at Newcastle. And he was an entertainer. And also, I think international management does this a lot. He's, personality-wise, he's the opposite of Glenn Hoddle. And I think it does swing backwards and forwards. Then we will enter a slightly different pendulum swing, which is we need a foreign coach who can be detached and cool. No, we actually need a passionate Englishman. And that swings back and forth for a few years. I do wonder if sometimes, Martin, there are certain managers that England basically have to give a shot to scratch the public itch. Yeah. And then once it's done, they can move on. Allardyce probably fits into that category, and then they can move on with it. But I think with Keegan, I get it. I know it's easy afterwards to sit there and say, "Oh, he was totally unsuited," and I do understand that. But I think when you're looking at it, going, "Well, they don't have the players for long." It's motivation. It's getting him to go out there with pride in his shirt. He's great at that. Players love him. They'll feel 10 feet tall. I get it, but it is also tactics, and he was ruthlessly exposed at that level. I mean, his European record at Newcastle was poor.
It's just like he's. This is a manager in the third division going to the England job. Like, as much as all those things are I just find it mad looking back at it. Like, I get he's transferring them and stuff, but. I mean,
no, there's precedence for that though. I mean, Ron Greenwood was general manager at West Ham when England appointed him, and Clough, when he was interviewed, Martin, Forest were in the second division, weren't they? I mean, obviously, like Keegan, he'd been Derby. He'd been Derby and stuff. But so I think there is precedence for it. I think it's more the man than the situation.
Yeah. I know what you're saying, Adam.
Adam. You wouldn't get now. No, you wouldn't get someone. You wouldn't get someone of Keegan's stature going to the Championship.
Yeah, so I think that's right. But he was not viewed as a second division manager. He was in the second division with a club, rightly, as it turned out, that people expected were going to be a Premier Division team some point soon, and they were. There was a very clear path there for Fulham. They were very much on the up. They were going to spend money, and he was a driving force behind that, and Michael Jackson and whoever else. But it was, people. Yeah, it's a strange kind of combination.
I can maybe understand it if it was like in the Championship and the level below, but 2 levels below the Premier League, it's like it just seems mad to me that was what they did. But the point is that it's happened before. But I just think when you compare it to
now,
not even now, but what's going on in the Premier League there, like with Wenger coming in and we're going to do this and we're going to do that, how far behind the FA were in terms of it needs to be an English manager. Can we find one in the top league? No. Can we find one in the second league? No. Okay, let's who's doing good underneath that? It's a little bit Mike Bassett. I'm not going to lie.
I'm trying to remember when Mike Bassett came out. It's probably mid mid-noughties. I can't remember. But that would have
I will-
absolutely that would
I will look
absolutely
it up.
have lent on some of that trope. I mean, looking back, Adam,
I
and
have
2
to
years
admit,
later,
by the way, I'm looking at 2001, Mike
so
Bassett.
2001. I thought it was maybe a bit later.
I didn't check Mike Bassett on my notes for today's show, so I had to look that up during the show. But I'm sorry for being unprofessional, listeners, but that was not one that had factored into my
2001 is
research.
obviously where it really is kind of fallen down. Sven is very much in place, and it looks like England will never be there again with that type of manager. But yeah, in retrospect, for sure, some said at the time that this is going against the grain of where English football is going, which is far more professional, far more tactically aware, far more thorough. And as much as Keegan was undoubtedly loved and a vibes man, he was not thorough, and that will become apparent quickly. Other couple of things before we take a break and get on to the Premier League action. Plenty of crazy managerial appointments this season, but one that we talked about last week appears to be bearing fruit, David, and that's wee Geordie Graham turning up at White Hart Lane. Bing bang bosh, trophy in the door already. This guy gets results. League Cup win, Worthington Cup win, sorry, over Leicester City. So, yeah, this is what I do, right? And this is why you just fucking shut up and appreciate what I bring to you. You either want a club that's romantic or you want a club that wins. He's delivering early.
100%, and it is that. And let's be honest, Tottenham Hotspur, as a club of its size, has bankrupted several silversmiths in the Tottenham area over the years. It has not won remotely close to what it should have won. And he pitches up and instantly there's a trophy. I've crossed the line, and this is what I do. You have a serial trophy winner who's pitched up and won a trophy. There is absolutely no reason whatsoever to assume that this is not going to continue, because this is what he does. He has a proven track record, a demonstrable track record of doing it. And anyone beating Leicester at this point in whatever iteration of the League Cup that it is deserves it, because they love this trophy, this tournament, Leicester City at this point. But I think that there was a sense for Tottenham that after a fair few, missteps, there was an adult there. And an adult with a burning desire to prove people wrong. Someone who felt that he'd been scapegoated for a widespread practice in football, and that he'd been used for the authorities to say, right, look, everything's done and we've put this to bed. And it worked, by the way. Fair play to the authorities. It did. It did end that religious discussion. But yeah, I just thought, well, this is what he does at the time. I wasn't surprised in any way that George Graham was picking up trophies. And again, people forget that he did have Leeds on the right track. That's it wasn't like he was at Leeds and struggling badly. That's sort of a bit of narrative that's gripped, and that O'Leary came in and took everything. O'Leary did very well, but he took something on that was already there and had been built. But yeah, I have to be honest, with hindsight, I can say, well, it's a League Cup and it was a blip, as we know. But at the time, I thought, yeah, you hired him to do this. He's starting to deliver, and he will continue to deliver.
Okay, we'll take a break there. Plenty to get back to after this. Welcome back to And It's Live, the history of the Premier League. This is the end of 1998-99. Before we get to the two big hitters battling it out on more than one front, let's talk about the bottom, David. Everton and Walter Smith look in serious trouble by the spring of 1999. That aforementioned Merseyside derby, cocaine celebrations and all, really put them in a bit of trouble. And Walter did what he was quite wont to do, David, which was go into the market, find a very sensible, clever, stable signing and get him out of trouble. Either get a title over the line up here, or get Everton out of trouble down there. And Kevin Campbell came in, pretty much immediate impact, and by the time the sun came out for real at the end of the season, they were pretty comfortable. He was good at that, and Campbell, what, an instant hero?
Oh, the late great Kevin Campbell, beloved by the blue half of Merseyside, and understandably so. I loved Kevin Campbell anyway. He was just such a great, big, proper, old school English striker. That's denigrating him slightly, Martin, because there was more to his game than that. But I don't think there's anything wrong in celebrating characteristics he had that were effective. I think nowadays we would call it occupying centre halves. Back then we called it not giving them a moment's peace, which he did. He was commanding and he was quick, but he was strong. And more importantly, he scored goals. He saved Everton this year, almost single-handedly. I mean, Everton were bad at this point. There was a fan confronting, I think it was Alex Nyarko on the pitch and saying, "Give me your shot because you're not using it." It was a bad time. And Campbell arrived and he gave everyone a boost. I think his personality at the ground gave everyone a boost, and that's an undervalued facet. His performances on the pitch. He arrived at a squad that wasn't confident, and he brought confidence, and he gave confidence. But then he did that. That's all well and good. You know, you can be wonderful around the training ground. If you're not doing it when it matters, then it's not going to help. But his burst of goal scoring, as you say, Everton are actually safe by the end. It's not a last dayer. And this is, honestly, it's entirely down to Kevin Campbell. What a burst this is. You couldn't do it now, obviously, Martin. You couldn't go out in March and make, a late signing. It was kind of fortuitous because he'd gone to Turkey and they had done their well, actually, the chairman had been racist towards him in a public statement, but they'd also done that thing that Turkish clubs continue to do to this day, and for some reason UEFA and FIFA allow them to do, which is they sign a player, they promise big money, and if the player doesn't do as well as they hope, then they stop paying him. They withhold the money. And Kevin Campbell was a victim of that, and there, of course, when he was racially abused by the chairman. But my goodness, was that to Everton's advantage? And if ever there was a club and player that were destined to meet and almost soulmates, it's these two, because Everton had missed Ferguson as a player and as a personality. They love a big number 9 there. Bob Latchford, Andy Gray, Duncan Ferguson. Kevin Campbell comes in, fulfills that role as well, scores the goals, and it's the old cliche of maybe the season was ending at the wrong time for them, because by the end of it, they were looking up the way rather than back down. And he just settles. He settles Everton so much. Honestly, there are several times, Barry Horn, obviously, Lampard escape, that Everton could have gone down over the past 30 years. There are. But when they're building a statue outside the new ground to people who ensured that it didn't happen, they should have won up for Kevin Campbell.
Yeah. Adam, Nottingham Forest couldn't save themselves for the drop. Harry Bassett got binned, and then Big Ron came in, couldn't do the job. There's another, I guess, big name who will fall, and we'll talk about them in a minute. On the last day, it was between Southampton and Charlton. Charlton ended up on the wrong side of that, and Southampton really propelled by another young, promising England striker, which is James Beattie. I mean, some of the goals he scored were absolutely terrific, technically brilliant, and again, another youngish English manager in Dave Jones. That maybe there's something there. Kirbishley in that conversation we talked about before, but BT was another one that just had a lot of promise about him.
Yeah, he was for sure. I think Southampton at this time, it's easy to think, Matt Le Tissier is a dominating factor. We had Kevin Davies. I think he left the summer before, didn't he? He went to Blackburn. And you have to say getting James Beattie in for a far smaller fee than that. I think it was a swap, was it not? There was something. But Beattie came from Blackburn, I'm sure, at the same time.
Yeah.
They well overpaid for that. I think $7.5 million for Kevin Davies. I mean, it was not a terrible player by any stretch of the imagination, but $7.5 million even then. Guys, we cannot discuss James Beattie without mentioning the time that he was headbutted by a naked Tony Pulis, because if we don't mention any time we speak of James Beattie that he was once headbutted by a naked Tony Pulis in the Arsenal dressing rooms, in the Emirates dressing room, what are we even doing at this point?
Yeah, what an image that is. I'd be interested to see that.
Did he was cap on? I want to know.
Cap on as well, definitely. Maybe even backwards at that point because he was chilling. Bit of a miracle, I think, for Southampton. This, if I'm honest, I think it's 7 wins. 7 wins before May in the league all season, and then they fire out 3 and 3. It's the graveyard of Ranger strikers, I think, that sees them through. You've got Austin Statt and you've got James Beattie popping up with the goods. Marian Pahars, I'm sure, was linked with us quite a bit as well, wasn't he, at one point? So,
but a wee bit of commentary because Pahar scores an important goal and said Southampton are ahead. Scored by a man named Marian. He was like, right, he's not from your country, mate. I mean, the names maybe mean different things.
Spell it differently.
Slightly different development, yeah.
Wasn't John Wayne's real name Marian?
Well, you say that to his face.
Well, but you know, the officially the hardest man who ever lived, and his real name was Marian. So,
yeah. So I feel a bit bad for Charlton. We spoke about them before. It was. It didn't go down to the last day of the season. It was a while before that, but Southampton did what they had to do. I guess at the end of the season is the easiest way you can do it. And yeah, Kevin Campbell, I thought was terrific for Everton in this run-in that we spoke about there. Was it 9 goals in 9 games? That really, really does get them right up to that mid-table point that they would have been aiming for. But I think Southampton always link in with. Again, I'm not sure nowadays. You would hear all about it with recruitment and why they were tapping into that Scandinavian market as much, and who it was that was doing it and all that. I don't know the ins and outs of it. If we have any Southampton fans in the comments, let us know. But they always felt like that, didn't they? They always felt like they had those type of players, those good players that you'd sign in Football Manager, Championship Manager. For buttons from Helsingborgs or from Häcken or whatever. I always felt like that was what Southampton had at that point. So I quite enjoyed watching them play. They still have Letizia, obviously, at this point. They didn't score a huge amount of goals, I think, this season. It's fair to say, being down the bottom of the league, but BT will certainly help them with that in the years coming. And yeah, as David said, 7 million for Davies and I think 1 million it was for BT coming in that summer was some great business, and even better when it keeps them up.
It did go down the last day. They were only 2 points ahead of Charlton the final day. Charlton were at home to Sheffield Wednesday. I think they lost, and Southampton home to Everton, and they got what they needed to ensure their safety. What also went down to the last day, of course, was the title race. We picked up last week, or we left off last week rather, with United and Arsenal sharing a 1-1 draw. Some thrills and spills, but undefeated after that for a good while. April for Manchester United is just chaotic. They have these 2 FA Cup final semi-final games against Arsenal. The need for a replay, obviously, we'll get to in a minute. That's sandwiched by the 2 Juve Champions League semi-final legs. Famous. Go and listen to the main event for more on that. And at the other end are the 2 league games, which are 2 away draws to Wimbledon and Leeds United. The latter certainly feeling like it could be quite damaging. Well, let's try and keep things in some kind of order chronologically. Let's go to these semi-finals. Yeah, I know it's not the Premier League, but it is absolutely part of this story. The hype around this first semi-final was huge. These 2 giant teams basically running the roost in England now for a wee bit. Arsenal going for a double, Manchester United for a potential treble. The first game kind of didn't live up to that hype. I think it's probably fair to say Manchester United should have won. Like Roy Keane scored a goal that was, well, Giggs was not offside, I think, when he picked the ball up and then eventually delivered it. So that was a bit unfair. Days before VAR, of course. Gary Neville could have been sent off in the first minute. I mean, 2 bookable offences. He does get booked for 1, I think. Nelson Vivas eventually gets sent off. Again, he could have easily gone earlier. There's a couple of others. It's 0-0 after extra time. We have to go back only a few days later to Villa Park on that Wednesday evening or whenever it was, for one of the most famous FA Cup games of all time. Beckham scores, as he is continually doing at this moment in time. I think it's fair. Bergkamp equalises. Keane loses the head and gets sent off, an absolutely vicious tackle. And then possibly the whole season on that spin, Phil Neville, stupid decision, gives away a penalty. And Dennis Bergkamp from the penalty spot is pretty safe. Right, if a keeper saves, it's a good save. It's not a good penalty. If Arsenal score that, it is over. Arsenal go through. They win another double, back-to-back doubles. Well, they certainly win back-to-back FA Cups. Does this change the direction of the Premier League and indeed the Champions League for Manchester United? Or do they brush that off and say, well, that's the least of our three, if you like. We're going for history still.
I guess we'll never really know, will we? But for me, I think it gives them that impetus. We know what Ferguson is all about. We know that these type of things matter for them, particularly in these run-ins. I guess, yeah. If I agree, if they win that game, it's tough to say if Arsenal win that game that they would go on and win the league, because they were basically flawless in the league up until they weren't. One defeat since Christmas, and it comes in a game I'm sure we're just going to cover. So I don't know. I know for sure that they would have won that one. The whole Juventus thing potentially takes care of itself. It may not have had much of an impact on that, but you just don't know. This league was won in such fine margins that any negative or positive there could potentially derail something, whether it was the red card you mentioned, whether it's the penalty going in, whether somehow Ryan Giggs does all of those things and then skies the shot, which would have been quite the thing. So I'm not sure. I think it's all just links in a chain, or just another little inch forward, and it can't help. I don't think it particularly damaged Arsenal, like I said, in a huge way. So maybe it would have been the same if it was United. Who knows?
Yeah, because Arsenal respond, obviously, unless anyone doesn't know how that semi-final ended. Another Patrick Vieira missed pass, which he did in the first game as well and got away with. He didn't that night because Giggs goes on his slaloming run. Outrageous goal, outrageous celebration, outrageous chest hair, all the rest of it. Very, very famous. And yeah,
took me about 5 years to realise that he had in fact taken his top off.
He didn't have a t-shirt on or whatever, but he then propels what happens. But Adam, it's a fair point, because Arsenal then don't go in a huff. And they don't just eke out a couple of wins. I mean, they start scoring and well. They beat Wimbledon 5-1 immediately after. Then they go to Borough and win 6-1. They're absolutely incredible that day. And at the end of April, that Leeds United game that I mentioned, there's a Sheffield Wednesday win at Old Trafford, kind of routine in the middle of that as well. But yeah, things looking tasty as we go into May. Arsenal, I think, are ahead, but United with a game in hand that would obviously take them ahead. And the 5th of May then is pretty important. Wednesday night, derby night, because Arsenal are at White Hart Lane and Manchester United are at Anfield. Huge, it seems like quite a huge night. United Arsenal 2 up early. Very, very comfortable indeed. Dwight York gets United ahead. They go 2-0 up before the hour mark with a Dennis Irwin penalty. All looking good. Jamie Redknapp, I think, had put one in for Spurs, got them back in. Maybe not David. It was Dan Anderton, sorry, that scored a free kick. So Arsenal pull back a little bit before half-time, bit of jingle-jangles with the nerves, and then Liverpool get a goal back, Leonardson, and then Dennis Irwin gets sent off, ridiculously sent off, actually. Just this very, very silly thing to be involved in. Kanu with an absolutely, Kanu goal, superb, to put Arsenal pretty much in comfort zone. And then Paul Ince, the governor, David, makes it 2-2 very late on. Safe to say he enjoyed that. United still have a game left, but they're 3 points behind now and a goal behind. It feels like we're going to have this shootout where it's really just who can score the most. And it looks like Arsenal are the ones finding the goals at this moment. But what a night.
Yeah, it was an incredible night. The game, the Liverpool Man United game was the live game. And you thought United were pretty comfortable. But Irwin, red card, as you say, nonsense. It's interesting, isn't it? I mean, there was an ill discipline at times to this Manchester United side. Keane, we talk about the famous night and cheer in the booking, but then how he keeps going. But if that semi-final goes the other way, the FA Cup semi-final, people are picking up on that. Instead, it's a footnote. Oh, yeah. See, if you are annoyed by the performative over non-celebrating against your former club, then go and check out this Paul Ince goal, folks, because short of whipping off his shirt to reveal a T-shirt saying, "Get it right up, you Sir Alex Ferguson," plain old Alex Ferguson this time, I don't think he could really have done more. Yeah, he loved this. It seemed important. I mean, it did. I mean, it was, obviously. The United have to overcome it to go on and win it, but it just felt, because this, 2-1 at Tottenham, that can go one way, 2-1 at United. We've been in title races where our side has pulled out a result and the other side hasn't, and we've gone, this is big, and we've been proven right. And we've, unfortunately, recently in particular, had a lot of them where we have not won a game and they have, and you go, because you do know, but you're not always right. This proves it, because at this point I thought, well, game on Arsenal. For the simple fact, Martin, that as you said, they were flying. They were scoring left, right and centre. They were blasting everybody. And there was so much noise around United. The treble, the Champions League, the goal against Arsenal. There was so much noise around them that you just thought it must be difficult to stay fully focused, whereas Arsenal just looked laser guided into it. And the manner of the goal that Ince scores, when he slides in to get the contact, and United players, you see it on their faces, they're like, Jesus, this is big. And it was him. And I know we shouldn't always concentrate on narrative, but narrative is big to us humans. It's how we make sense of a chaotic random world. It felt enormous at this point. And you have to say it, the morning after that, it is absolutely advantage Arsenal. They're in the box seat.
They are. Manchester United beat Middlesbrough 1-0. So with 2 games left each, the level in points, the level in goal difference, United are top on goals scored, Adam. Arsenal go next. So there's 2 midweek games on different nights before the final weekend of the season. They go to Elland Road. Not an easy game at all. Leeds very much on the up. This is a brilliant game, by the way. If there's no goal, even if there's only 1 goal in this game, even if it did not happen, it would be a game that I would point to and say 0-0s can be excellent, because the tension, the nerves, but there's still good football. The bars rattled, penalties are missed, Seaman's absolutely superb. It's real, it's a proper contest. In the end, 3 minutes to go, Adam, Jimmy Floyd Hasselbank pops up at the back post with a diving header to put Leeds in front and give them the points. This feels utterly, utterly catastrophic. In the end, it would be fatal to Arsenal. Leeds fans, by the way, leaving Elland Road, genuinely thinking this could be them this time next year. We are very, very close to just making that jump. United go to Ewood Park a couple of nights later, where they could feasibly win the title, I suppose. And they get a point only. Again, Blackburn trying to stay up. They need a win. They don't get it. They go down that night. But United then with the marginal advantage going into the final game with that solitary point. It's one of those games then, Adam, because as you said, Arsenal have been almost perfect throughout this kind of back end run, but it is a very tough game.
Yeah, I think they just didn't score enough goals overall. Now, as you mentioned there, Kanu coming in probably opens them up a little bit more, makes them a little bit more fluid, gives them a bit of unpredictability in there, but they just didn't have enough goals about their team. I mean, you only need to look at the comparison between the goals scored and the goals conceded, and United score 80. Arsenal score 59, Arsenal concede 17, and United concede 37. So United are conceding a goal a game. Arsenal's 17 is wild. Is that a record for the time? It must have been, because Chelsea was, 15?
Chelsea beat it, 15,
5 years later. So that sort of sums it up. They've fused a modern team onto the defence, but they're just maybe not got the swashbucklingness that United have, and certainly that Henry would bring to Arsenal. So I think that is what can happen when you rely more on control and 1-0s. When you then have to open it up, you can, but when you really, really have to open it up, now I wouldn't say it was an onslaught on Leeds' goal. I think Arsenal probably deserved to win the game, but
very even. I think
it was even. So that's just one of those moments you're thinking, right? Who's my big player who's going to step up and who's going to score? Who's going to score the goals that are going to fire me to the title? So it's tricky because United it sort of felt like United knew what to do. They knew how to sort of get there. They knew that they were juggling on 3 separate fronts, but it kind of didn't matter. You knew that one of those 4 strikers was going to score at least every other game, whereas
they had ridiculous firepower. Arsenal had amazing firepower, right? But not quite the volume. Yeah, and not quite the volume, and not quite the different styles either, as Adam mentioned there. To be able to do it, that's why they signed Kanu. To be fair to Arsene Wenger, he goes and he gets something that is different to what he's got, because he knows that, he recognises that. But the Leeds game, in another world, it's Arsenal who get the win in this one. I mean, it's a toss up. This game, It was a brilliant game. Martin's right. I remember watching it. I vividly remember watching it. And they cut to the Arsenal crowd. It's the first I can recall it's happening. There was a middle-aged man in his 50s. It's on the footage if you go back and watch it on YouTube, folks. And he burst into tears. And I'd never seen that before at a football match. And I'd grew up, with support the big team, that if we lose a game, we don't get sad, we don't cry, we get angry. we look for who to blame rather than, feeling sorry for ourselves. And I just thought at the time, obviously it's now, completely overplayed. But at the time, I just thought, wow, just shows you how tense this is and how much this means to them. That the bloke had burst into tears at the away end, and I think represented the fact that they knew that night. And I remember going into the Sunday, and then they try to hype it, and we'll come to Tottenham taking the lead and all this. But we knew. I think everybody going into that weekend went, United are now going to win this. But that is a bastard of a fixture, second last out.
Yeah, I mean,
it really is.
We could go through all the narratives about the array of options that United have, and they score lots of goals. We'll see them through. But Arsenal do know how to do it. I mean, they literally, the amount of 1-0s that they managed to just muster up last season it was just a hard game under pressure. If that game's in February, maybe it's a lot different. It's an fixtures matter when they happen, in my opinion. As you mentioned, Arsenal need Spurs to do them a favour. It looked like it might be on. incredible Les Ferdinand lob that put Spurs ahead. United very nervy, missing a lot of chances. I think Beckham missed a header, but then he fucking swept one into the back of the net. And yeah, there's something about that in his season, what he went through and all of that. Andy Cole, a superb controlled lob just after half time that made anything that Arsenal did academic. United win the title. And then the 10 days that followed, FA Cup final, bit of a non-event, if truth be told. Newcastle were poor. And United, I think, saw that as a formality. And then Munich, again, if you want to go to the main event, you'll hear us in depth about the Champions League final in Barcelona and how Ferguson really mismanaged it, to be honest. But the way of that season, things just happened. And when you feel destiny is calling, it can do incredible things to you. We need to wrap up, gents, on this season. The only question I have left, Adam, we'll start with you. Is this the best Premier League team we have seen in a season?
I don't know. No, I'm going to say no. I'm going to say Invincibles, and I'm going to say United a decade later for me are better. Does this have more of my favourite players than some of those teams? Probably, yeah. Or does it have more talented players in there? Yeah, but I think the other two I'd put just a little shade higher. It's definitely the top three. I feel like this season is one of those, and if Rob is listening, he'll probably either shout at me or agree, but it's one of those where it happens and you're like, oh wow, that was a big surprise, rather than a kind of all-out domination and just knocking everything out their way. They end up with domination, but as we've seen here, very, very fine margins in Turin, in the Nou Camp, Southampton in the FA Cup, and then obviously the tail end of the season. So it could have went either way in 3 or 4 different games there. So from that point of view, great achievement, some great players, but I think I'll probably put the other two just slightly higher.
Davey?
United 08 is tough. Chelsea under Mourinho.
Oh, yeah,
I mean, they're not sexy, but my goodness, they were frigging. I mean, that 2 years they won the first 2 titles. City, you can't leave it City. Some of their achievements in the last 10 years have been almost beyond belief. Things that we didn't think were possible that they've done. I mean, having to get 99 points to win a title because the rival has got 98. That is incredible. So it's up there for me. I think in terms of, you can judge about who the best, and we'll all have our own criteria for that. Most exciting? It's a hard to get a season that had this. This is a movie of a season. It's got a filmic, it's got a cinematic quality to it, and that, I think, is why it's always going to stand out.
Yeah. I think the 08-09 United team is better. I'd forgotten just how scrappy the first 2/3, maybe first half of the season actually is.
Not a lot of
up until the Liverpool City challenge later on, David. I don't think there are many better second place teams than this Arsenal team.
I agree with that.
However, and therefore,
totally agree with that.
It's about beating what's in front of you, and that really has to be played into the equation. Anyway, maybe one for another day when we get a few more classics under our belt. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you.
Thank you, David.
Thank you, guys.
We'll be back next time. We're going to party like it's 1999. Until then, bye for now.